The first penetration testing section in this course is going to be the network hacking section. The reason why I chose to start with this, because everything, if you think of it, is connected to a network. So whether your target is a personal computer, whether it's a server, whether it's a company, or even if it's just a website, all of these systems are actually connected to a network. Literally, when you just connect to the internet, you're connecting to a network because the internet is just a really, really big network. So it is very important that you understand how networks work and how devices communicate with each other before we actually move into the next sections. So this section is actually going to be divided into 3 subsections. In the first subsection, we're going to talk about all of the attacks that you can do before connecting to a network. So you literally just have a computer with a network interface, possibly a Wi-Fi adapter, and we're going to see what can you do now before even connecting to anything. In the second subsection, I'm going to show you how to crack Wi-Fi keys and gain access to Wi-Fi networks, whether they use WEP, WPA, or WPA2. Once you have the access, you can move to the third section, which will apply for both Wi-Fi and wired networks. All of the attacks that you will learn in the third subsection apply whenever you are able to connect to the network, once you're able to gain access to the network. And here is where the real fun starts, because you're going to learn a number of powerful attacks that will allow you to intercept the connections in the network and capture everything sent in it, including usernames, passwords, URLs, chat messages, and so on. Not only that, but you'll also be able to modify data as it's being sent in the air. So you'll be able to control requests, serve people fake updates, inject evil code into the pages that they load, and so many other cool things. So everything in the third section will apply for both Wi-Fi and wired networks. Now, before we start talking about network hacking, you need to have a basic understanding on how networks work. Now, we all know that a network usually contains a number of clients connected to each other, and clients usually connect to a network in order to share data or share a resource. A really good example of a resource that we all have connected to networks in order to access is the internet. So we connect to Wi-Fi networks and even wired networks all the time just to access the internet. Now, all networks, whether it's Wi-Fi or wired, work on the same principle. They have a device that is considered a server. Now, in many cases, for example, in your home network, this server is your router. This is also referred to as an access point. Now, this router or server or access point is the only device that has access to the resource. So none of these clients have direct access to the resource even after connecting to the network. The only way they can access the resource is through the access point. So let's say, for example, you're client number 1 and you connected to your home network over Wi-Fi or over Ethernet over a cable, and then you opened your browser and you typed google.com. What happens is your computer will send a request to the access point asking for google.com. The access point has access to the resource, which is the internet in this example, so it's going to go and look for google.com. It will receive google.com and it'll forward that response to your computer, and as a result, you will see the website loading on your browser. So if you actually go to your router at home and look at it, you'll see at the back it's connected through a cable to the wall, and this is how it's getting its internet access. Therefore, it is the only device in your network that has direct access to the resource, And none of your computers, none of the computers connected to the network can access the resource or can access the internet without the router, without the access point. So the only way for all of the connected clients to access the resource is to go through the router. Now the data is transferred between the clients and the access point as packets. So you can think of all of these arrows as a series of packets being transmitted between the client and the router as requests and responses. Now in Wi-Fi networks, these packets are transmitted in the air. Therefore, if you have a wireless card and you're within range, you'll be able to capture all of these requests and responses. So basically, you'll be able to see anything that any computer connected to the same network as you does on the internet. Because they will have to send all of this data to the access point, and because they're sending this data in the air because you're in a Wi-Fi network, you'll basically be able to capture these requests and responses, and you'll be able to see the URLs they visit, the usernames, the passwords they enter, the chat messages. Anything they do on the internet will be sent as packets, and therefore you'll be able to capture it and analyze it. We'll talk more about that and more about how networks work as we go through the course. But this is enough to get you going through the next few lectures so that you can sniff data, analyze it, and start launching some cool pre-connection attacks. In this lecture, I'm going to show you how to connect a USB device to a virtual machine. As an example, I'll be connecting a wireless adapter to the virtual Kali machine, but this method can be used to connect any type of USB adapter. As mentioned in the course requirements, you need a wireless adapter for the cracking sections of the course. These two sections account for less than 8% of the course. So, if you don't have a wireless adapter and can't afford to buy one, then that's completely fine. You could simply skip these two sections, continue from the network hacking post-exploitation section, and you'll be able to do everything else in the course without a wireless adapter. Now, what we mean by a wireless adapter is simply a USB device that you connect to your computer, and it allows your computer to communicate with Wi-Fi networks. Now, most modern computers come with built-in wireless cards. The only problem is these built-in wireless cards are not good for hacking. The Wi-Fi or wireless adapter that we need needs to support monitor mode, packet injection, and AP mode. I will include a video in the resources to help you pick a good wireless adapter. And don't worry about what we mean by these modes. We will talk about this as we go through the course, but basically you need to get a wireless adapter that supports all of these three modes, and it should be supported by Kali Linux. The main thing you want to keep in mind is the brand does not matter. What you need to look for is any adapter that uses any of these two chipsets. The chipset is the brains of the wireless adapter. It's what does most of the work, and therefore if you get any adapter, regardless of what brand it is, if it uses any of these two chipsets, it should support all of these modes, and it should work with everything that I'm going to do and you'll learn in this course. So anyway, check out the video in the resources for more information on how to pick a good wireless adapter. I'm also going to include a link in the resources for our own shop where we sell supported wireless adapters, but you do not have to buy it from us. You can buy it from anywhere as long as you get an adapter that uses one of the recommended chipsets. The wireless adapter that I'm going to be connecting to this computer is actually going to be this one that uses the Realtek 8812AU chipset. You can follow the same instructions for whatever wireless adapter as long as it's supported by Kali. So what we need to do is simply run VMware. We're going to click on the Kali machine. We're going to right click it and go to its settings. We're going to click on add in here to add a USB controller. We're going to select that we want to add a USB controller in here. We're going to click on Finish. And in the settings for the USB compatibility, I'm going to set this to 3.1. I'm going to click on Show All USB Input Devices. And we're going to click on OK. And we're done. Now, before starting Kali, make sure that you disconnect the wireless adapter. So if you already have it connected to your computer, physically disconnect it from the USB port from the computer. Make sure you do that before starting Kali. So I'm going to go ahead and start it. I'm going to log in. Once logged in, let's go and open up our terminal. And I'm going to run ifconfig. This command is used to list all of the network interfaces connected to this computer. And if I hit enter, you'll see right now I have two interfaces. One of them is called ETH0. This is a virtual Ethernet interface that is actually created by VMware in order to connect this machine through the virtual NAT network. You'll also have LO, which is the virtual loopback interface used in Linux. So both of these are virtual interfaces. None of them is our wireless adapter, but that is normal because I haven't connected my wireless adapter yet. So I'm going to go ahead and connect it to my computer. And as you can see, as soon as I do that, we're going to get a pop-up. The pop-up is asking us, what do we want to do with this? Do we want to connect it to the host? So the host is the main computer, the Windows computer, or do we want to connect it to the virtual machine? Now we obviously want to connect it to the virtual machine, so I'm selecting this option. This is the virtual machine that we're connecting it to, which is my Kali machine. That is perfect. And we're going to tick this box so that it always connects it to this machine in the future. It won't show me this pop-up message. Once we do that, we're going to see another pop-up that simply tells us that we can always connect and disconnect USB devices using the USB icon in here on the top right. So that's fine. I'm going to say thank you. Don't show me this either. We're going to click on OK. And now, if we run the exact same command, ifconfig again, you'll notice that I have another interface. So we still have ETH0, which is, like I said, the virtual interface that is used to connect to the virtual NAT network. We also still have LO, the loopback interface, and we have a new interface right now called LAN 0, which is my wireless adapter that I just connected to Kali. So now we can go ahead and use this adapter to discover wireless networks around us and hack them. And we will talk about that in details in the next lectures. And as mentioned, you only need this for 10% of the course, only for the cracking section. Also, now if we look here on the top right, you'll notice that we have an option for Wi-Fi. And if we click on it, we can select a network and connect to a Wi-Fi network. Now, I don't want to do that, and you should not do that because we don't need to do this. We don't need the wireless adapter to connect to Wi-Fi networks. We already have internet access in here through the virtual NAT network through ETH0. We're only using the wireless adapter to actually discover wireless networks and hack them, not to connect to them. When it comes to networking, you probably heard of the term MAC address a lot. So in this lecture, I'm going to cover what do we mean by MAC address, what it's used for, and how to change it. MAC address stands for Media Access Control. It's a permanent, physical, and unique address assigned to network interfaces by the device manufacturer. So whether you have a wireless card or a wired or Ethernet card, each one of these network cards come with a specific address that is unique to this card. So there is no two devices in the world that would have the same MAC address, and this address will always be the same to this specific device. Even if you unplug it from your computer, connect it to another computer, then this network device will always have the same address. So you might already know that the IP address is used in the internet to identify computers and communicate between devices on the internet. The MAC address is used within the network to identify devices and transfer data between devices. So each piece of data or packet that is sent within the network contains a source MAC and a destination MAC. Therefore, this packet would flow from the source MAC to the destination MAC. So, because this is a physical unique address to each interface, to each network device, and because it is used to identify devices, then changing it will make you anonymous on the network. Not only that, but the MAC address is often used by filters to prevent or allow devices to connect to networks and do specific tasks on the network. So being able to change your MAC address to another device's MAC address will allow you to impersonate this device and allow you to do things that you might not be able to do. So you'd be able to bypass filters or connect to networks that only specific devices with specific MAC addresses can connect to, and you will also be able to hide your identity. Now, changing the MAC address is very simple. So let me show you how to do that. First of all, I'm going to use the ifconfig command to list all the network interfaces available on my Kali machine. What I mean by network interface is any device that allows us to connect to a network. So an example is a Wi-Fi card or an Ethernet card and so on. So you can see, first of all, we have ETH0, and this is a virtual interface created by VirtualBox when we set Kali to use a NAT network. So you can see the interface name is ETH0. You can see it has an IP address because, like I said, it's connected to a network. So if we go here, we can see it's saying wired connected. So this is the interface that represents the wired network that Kali is connected to, which is actually a virtual NAT network. You can also see the net mask, the broadcast, and a really important piece of information, which is the ether. This is the MAC address of this virtual interface. Now you can see similar information for my other two interfaces, the LO and the LAN 0. The only thing is, you can see for both of these interfaces, we do not have an IP address. And the main reason for that is because none of these interfaces is connected to a network. Now LO is a default interface created by Linux, and LAN 0 is my real wireless adapter, so I can use it to connect to Wi-Fi networks. But if I go on the network in here, you'll see Wi-Fi is not connected because I actually didn't connect to any network, and that's why it does not have an IP address. Now this doesn't matter because what we want to do is to just change the MAC address, which again is shown here under the ether part. So similar to what you're seeing here for ETH0. Now, in order to change any of the values that you see in here, you have to first disable the interface. So, in this example, we want to change the MAC address. So that is represented by the ether, and the value is right here. So, in order to disable an interface, we're going to do ifconfig, followed by the interface name, which is LAN 0 in my example, followed by down to disable it. Now, if I hit enter, you'll see the command runs with no errors, so it means that it got executed properly. And the next thing that we need to do is to change the option that we want to change. And in this example, we want to change the ether, which is the MAC address. So first we're going to type ifconfig. We're going to type the interface that we want to change one of its options. Then we're going to type the option that we want to change. And what we want to change is the hardware address. So we're going to do HW ether. Then we're going to give it the address that we want to change the MAC address to. So for example, I'm going to use 001122334455. very simple command. We're doing ifconfig lan0 to select the interface that we want to change its option. We want to set the hardware address, and we want to set this address to this specific address. So you can use any address that you want following the same format shown here. Just make sure your address starts with 00. So I'm gonna hit enter, and again we don't see any error messages, so it means the command got executed properly. And finally, we just need to enable the interface because we disabled it by doing ifconfig lan0 down. So we just need to do ifconfig lan0 up to enable it. Now the interface is enabled, and if we do ifconfig again and look at the other part in here, you can see that it is changed to the MAC address that we specified. Now this is done and your MAC address is changed. Now you can go ahead and start using the interface, and it will appear to have this MAC address instead of its original MAC address. And like I said, this can be useful in so many scenarios. Now keep in mind, the MAC address will revert back to the original one once you restart the computer, because we're only changing the MAC address in memory. We're not really changing the physical MAC address. But if your MAC address is resetting to the original one without restarting, then something is going wrong, and it's probably happening because your network manager is resetting the MAC address. Not everybody will face this issue, so I'm not going to cover it in this lecture. But if you face this issue, if your MAC address goes back to the original one without restarting the computer, then check out the YouTube video in the resources of this lecture. It will show you how to fix this issue. From the previous lectures, we learned the basics of how networks work. We learned that devices on the same network communicate with each other using packets. So regardless of what you do on the network, whether you're watching a video, whether you're logging into a website, sending chat messages, sending emails, regardless of what you're doing, all the data is sent as packets. Now in the network, devices ensure that these packets go in the right direction using the MAC address. So each packet has a source MAC and a destination MAC, and it flows from the source to the destination. So in this example, we have the client, it has this MAC, we have the access point, which has this MAC. And as an example, if this client wanted to send a packet to the router, it will set the destination MAC to the router's MAC address. Therefore, by default, each device only receives data that has the destination MAC as its own MAC address. But if you remember, I said in wireless networks, if you're within range, then you'll be able to capture all of this communication because these packets are literally sent in the air. So we can just capture them even if they do not have our MAC address as the destination MAC. To do this, we need to change the mode of operation of our wireless interface so that it operates in monitor mode. So let me show you what I mean. If I go to my computer here and run iwconfig this time, so we've seen ifconfig, which lists all the interfaces. We can use iwconfig to see the wireless interfaces only. And you can see we have lan0 right here, which is my external wireless adapter. And you can see the mode of this adapter is set to managed. What this means is basically this is the default mode of all wireless devices, and what it means is this device will only capture packets that has the destination MAC as the MAC address of this device. So basically it will only capture devices that are directed to my Kali machine. But this is not what we want. What we want is to be able to capture all the packets that are within our range, even if they are sent to the router and even if they are set to another device. So to do this, we need to set the mode to monitor mode instead of managed mode. So, as usual, before you can change the options of your interface, you have to disable it. And previously, we've seen we can do that by doing ifconfig, the device name, which is LAN 0 in my case, down. Then we can enable monitor mode. But before we do that, I'm actually going to run a command to kill any process that could interfere with using my interface in monitor mode. So the command that I'm going to run right now is not mandatory, but running it will actually give you better results when you come to running the attacks that you will learn as we go in the course. So this command is going to be ermon-ng check kill. Now you'll notice when you run this command, it'll actually kill the network manager that usually runs in here. So you'll completely lose your internet connection. But this is no problem because we will only need to be in monitor mode when we are running pre-connection attacks. So attacks that do not require us to connect to any network. So we actually do not need internet connection to run any of the attacks that require monitor mode. Now we're going to enable monitor mode. So we're going to do iwconfig, followed by the interface name that we want to enable monitor mode on, which is LAN 0. We're going to say that I want to change the mode, and I want to change that to monitor. So very, very simple command. We're using iwconfig to change the mode. We're given the name of the interface that we want to change its mode. We're saying I want to change the mode, and I want to set it to monitor mode. Now if I hit enter, you'll see the command will run with no errors, which means the command got executed properly. And finally, we'll need to enable the interface, again similar to what we did when we changed the MAC address. So we just have to do ifconfig LAN 0 up. That's done. Now if I run iwconfig again, you will see that the mode is set to monitor now. So basically, this interface now can be used to capture any packet that is within our range, not only the packets that are directed to this computer. That's why in the future, you'll see how we can use it to sniff packets, to analyze them, and even break into networks. So in the future, if I say use your interface in monitor mode, this is what I mean. You'll basically have to enable monitor mode as shown in here. Now, I've also included a YouTube video in the resources of this lecture to show an alternative method to enable monitor mode. Just in case you got errors with this method, or you tried to follow something that I do in the next lectures and it didn't work, then you can come back and try the alternative method. But if this worked and if monitor mode is enabled successfully, then you don't need to watch that video, you can just continue with the course. One more thing to keep in mind, not all wireless adapters support monitor mode. So for this to work, you need to make sure that your actual adapter supports monitor mode. There are a number of adapters that support that, and I've included another video, again in the resources, of me talking about wireless adapters, how to pick the best one, and which ones that I recommend and use when I'm testing the security of networks.